Thanks, Kate. Hi, I'm Lisa Osika. I work for Hamilton Police Service. I am what's called the PSAP coordinator in Hamilton. My role is to work with the supervisory team, and I facilitate bridging a gap between IT, our vendors, and communications. Our department has a
Can you plug this in? Just put that magnetic slide thing on.
Our department has a sworn staff sergeant, which rotates out every few years. So having my role is a permanent position to assist the staff sergeant just with regards to technical things, because it's a pretty daunting task for a staff sergeant to walk into that role. And I will turn you over to Melissa.
Thank you. I'm Melissa LeBlanc. I got my ENP in 2024, and I am a supervisor in communications at Hamilton Police Service with Lisa. And that's it for me. Are we ready?
Yep, so welcome to everybody to the exciting session number 5. I'm sure you'll all be at the edge of your seats. Today we're going to be discussing PSAP systems and operational equipment. And for anyone that has the study guide out or wants to know, I know that Kate has done a really good outline, but we're going to cover sections 2.7 to 2.9, which is pages 38 through 50, section 2.15, which is pages 69 to 71, and then a very short section on 2.16, which is real-time text, and that's also on page 71. Melissa, do you mind? Thank you. This is a table of contents. We're going to go through the book the way that the book laid it out. So we'll talk about call handling architectures, and then we'll talk about the various equipment at the PSAPs, power and facility resilience, and then we'll move on to accessibility and texting and the different types of PSAPs that there are out there. And the section 7 is survivability and reliability. It kind of ties everything up into a nice little bow. And reviews why all of this equipment is important and what PSAPs should be doing as outlined through the NENA ENP study guide to preserve PSAP operations. We already said hello.
We sure did. Okay.
And then our introduction has a really lovely picture of Hamilton Police that is from our archives back when sworn personnel answered the phones for communications. So in today's session, we're going to talk about the key technologies that PSAPs rely on to deliver 911 services. We're going to review how these technologies are accessed by a PSAP and examine how systems all work together to ensure interoperability. And we were going to reference our PSAP just so that you have a practical reference. Just in case these ideas are a little bit foreign, it helps to think about your own agency, no matter where it is, and relate back, because we are all similar in that we all use the same types of equipment, no matter what kind of agency we work for, how big or small it is. We all have tools that we use in order to perform our jobs. As technology continues to evolve, PSAPs have become increasingly dependent on all of these tools that we use to support effective emergency responses. And at the same time, PSAPs have to actively work to keep pace with the rapid technological changes, especially in Canada, given that last year Hamilton Police was using phones from decades and decades ago. We were literally running on the last legs, and our E911 equipment was not surviving. So PSAPs are challenged to continue to evolve, especially with the deadlines that are looming in Canada. And oftentimes that is a balance between catching up to technology and ensuring that we are managing public expectations for 911 services, which we all know really do exceed operational realities. And our session is going to provide some context on how PSAPs manage that challenge and maintain reliable and efficient service delivery as referenced through the study guide. So on the slide, it says we're going to talk about call handling solutions. I don't know if everybody's noticed in the ENP guidebook, but it loves to use acronyms. Melissa and I were talking about how we had a little glossary of all of the acronyms, and then different quizzes that we used for the acronyms, because they definitely are mentioned in the exam. So call handling solution or call handling system is CHS, and that's one of those acronyms. We're going to talk about recorders and loggers and CAD systems and record management systems, TTY, RTT, and T911. Power and facility resilience, and then we're going to end it up with operational playbooks, which is the reliability and survivability piece. So the first section will be the call handling architectures, and the study guidebook does go through these two that we've basically summarized, and Melissa has found this beautiful graphic. So the first PSAP type, which there are two types covered, on-premise and hosted. And they both have unique sets of advantages, which, depending on the PSAP, could be a disadvantage. We have on-premise equipment, which is equipment being installed in today's PSAPs. And those are VoIP-enabled, and they have the ability to integrate both voice and data, which we will go through more in depth in a few slides. These systems have separate ANI-ALI controllers, which I know you guys have talked about in a session prior, and have been, the separate ANI-ALI controllers have been replaced by these systems that incorporate sophisticated automatic call distribution, or ACDs, and computer telephony integration, which means basically that your phone is speaking to your computer. And your call handling function can reside in a VoIP MLTS, which is a multi-line telephone system, which I do think the next session touches on more, session 6, or an equivalent functionality. But I know multi-line telephone systems are very popular. In the legacy systems, calls are received in the E911 selective router as a CAMA, MF, or EMF, and those calls are converted to VoIP and switched in the system. And these systems often used what's called a prefetch, in that as soon as they receive the ANI from the E911 selective router, they then query through the ALI system, and the ALI system is what's going to give you your location. The ALI links could be point-to-point, but they also can go through an IP network managed by the telephone service provider. So it does all of this fancy stuff that we're going to have a diagram of later on. And then it is presented to the call taker. So for the call taker, it's almost seamless. They'll get a 911 call in their ear if you've got a headset on, and the CAD computer will display the information from the call shortly after. And oftentimes it looks like it happens at the same time because it happens so quickly, depending on where you work and your CAD system. So on-premise configurations are traditionally what a lot of agencies have used. They're used to those, they're on-premise. They can be costly, and they do carry a lot of different responsibilities at the PSAP level. So for on-premise configurations in E911, I don't know the statistics, but I imagine a lot of agencies would have had that traditionally, and it would have been controlled or managed at the PSAP level. And then with that, those responsibilities I'm talking about are then you're tasked with who's going to maintain these systems, who's going to update them, how are they going to be updated, how often does your agency update them, who's going to fix things when they break, are they 24/7? We have an IT department at Hamilton Police, they're not 24/7. So what's going to happen to that on-premise equipment in the middle of the night on a Sunday? So those are the types of responsibilities that come with an on-premise configuration, is having subject matter experts and maintaining that equipment that can be costly. However, like I said, the advantages are that they're on-premise and they're controlled by the PSAP themselves, no matter who the PSAP is. What else do I want to say about on-premise? Oh, it does say in here, trunks terminate at the PSAP, which is an important note for everyone to note as a distinguishable factor. Because with the hosted solution, which is part of Hamilton's solution now, we did have on-premise E911 equipment. We transitioned to NG in June, and now Hamilton has chosen a hosted configuration of sorts. And that solution is designed to serve multiple PSAPs. So in Hamilton, it supports Hamilton Police and Hamilton Fire. And what it does is it connects operators' positions, or we connect workstations is what we call them, through dedicated circuits backed to that centralized host environment. So fire has dedicated circuits and police have dedicated circuits, all that tie back to that hosted environment. And the trunks for that terminate at the hosted control equipment, which allows for streamlined call handling and system management. And the benefit of that hosted solution is that it can reduce infrastructure and it can reduce operational costs. It might be very expensive at the jump, like when you're purchasing and designing it, but overall it could have lower operational costs. It's a scalable option for agencies that are looking to collaborate without wanting to sacrifice anything. So Hamilton Fire wants to retain their same functionality or improve from E911, and so does Hamilton Police. So we work together to achieve a hosted configuration that is happy for both of us. The negative to that is you do have some limitations with regards to the same thing with the subject matter experts. If something goes wrong in the middle of the night, you are maybe calling the vendor for a solution. I think there's a question, but I can't see it.
I'm going to put the next slide on for you there, Lisa.
That's your slide. But
That's my slide.
It is.
Okay.
But was
All
there
right.
was there a question though somewhere?
I don't know if I can see them. Can you see them?
Yeah, can you hear me? I have a
Yes.
question in the chat, but you're welcome to answer it now or at the end of the session. Up to you. I don't want to interrupt your flow. It's just if I didn't write it down, I'd forget it.
No, that's awesome. Does it relate to what we just talked about?
Well, sort of. Okay, I'll just read it then. So you mentioned that multiple PSAPs are using the same hosted solution. I'm curious if that also facilitates sort of EIDO information sharing when you're transferring a call, or is that completely unrelated?
No, that's a really good question.
Thank you.
So I know EIDO with us is not the conveyance we're using yet. It won't CAD to CAD. So our CADs won't share the information, but when we're transferring through our vendors' soft phones, that information is carried through. Does that make sense? But it is not yet through EIDO. I know Niagara is working on that.
Yes, I believe that makes some sense for now. Thank you.
Were you talking CAD to CAD information sharing? Do you know?
Yeah, I think I was. And once you said CAD, I realized that's different than CHS. So
But it is related though.
okay.
I know they're talking about it in SWIG with how you're going to share CAD information, and it's just not done yet. But I think in the future, yes, a hosted solution might provide that if we have the same CAD, which we do right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So this diagram here is located on page 39 of the study guide, and it illustrates the on-premise 911 call delivery process. And in this configuration, the call, along with its ANI, is delivered through the selective routing to the appropriate PSAP's call handling equipment, also known as the CPE, or customer premise equipment. And that's the dotted line, I think, here. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. So the PSAP queries the ALI database over redundant the ALI links, shown in the diagram as the dotted data path. And I believe the solid line is the voice path there. So the call handling equipment uses the automatic call distribution system, or the ACD, to identify the next available telecommunicator. And the call is then routed to that telecommunicator, while in parallel, the ALI database returns the ALI, which is delivered directly to the telecommunicator's workstation. The ACDs can be configured in different ways, and a common method in a busy PSAP is the longest idle. I know that we use that ourselves. So the 911 calls receive top priority and are sent to the telecommunicator who has been idle the longest. If no one is available, the calls will queue. And another option is ring all, where every workstation gets a ringing call until it is answered. So just a quick note about local ALI or SALI. In some cases, the ALI database is located directly at the PSAP, known as a standalone ALI system. And because it is co-located, there are no traditional ALI links, but there is still physical connectivity and interoperability between the call handling equipment and the ALI database to retrieve and deliver location information to the correct workstation. So from the telecommunicator's perspective, this process is very seamless. A 911 call is received. It may appear in the PSAP queue on the reader board or a wall board, and then is delivered to the telecommunicator's workstation. And at the same time, the ANI and the ALI data automatically spill into CAD, allowing the telecommunicator to verify the caller's location and information for accuracy. Okay, we'll do the next slide there. All right, so this is a picture from page 40 of the study guide, and this shows the basics of a hosted 911 configuration, which is different from the on-premise setup, although there are still similarities in the call flow. In the hosted configuration, the 911 calls are selectively routed to the appropriate PSAP. So in this model, the call and its ANI are delivered to the host's control equipment rather than directly to an individual PSAP. The host control equipment queries the ALI database over a redundant link and uses the automatic call distribution to route the call to the available telecommunicator at the correct PSAP. So in Hamilton, we have a hosted solution, and our system supports both the primary PSAP, which is Hamilton Police, and the secondary PSAP, which is Hamilton Fire. The workstations at the PSAPs connect to the host control equipment and allow the call and the ALI information to be delivered simultaneously to the telecommunicator, and they are spilled into CAD when the 911 call is answered. Okay, on to the next section.
And for the ACDs, or the automatic call distributions, another popular example is the ring all feature. If you're in a smaller PSAP, you could have the call handling system ring to all of the positions, and whoever answers the phone, or maybe one person answers and it's in everybody's headsets. The fire department has different ACDs than the police department have. We just use the longest idle because of how big our PSAP is and how many calls we receive at once. So with regards to the recording and logging equipment, this section picks up where the telecommunicator that Melissa talked about that received the call from the call handling solution through the ACD at their workstation answers that call and what happens with it then. So most PSAPs will automatically begin the recording through what's known as positional recording. And that means that your recording equipment will start recording when the position answers the call. Our recording equipment, and you could have different ways in which your recording equipment works. Ours recognizes positions, not people. So we need to know where the call taker sat in order to retrieve the recording. It does not matter to us who it was, other than voice recognition. If we're trying to listen to a recording, if it doesn't sound like the right person, we might know we've got the wrong position. And these systems will capture not only the 911 calls, but they'll capture administrative incoming, administrative outgoing, as well as radio and dispatch transmissions within the agency. The study guide explains all of this information and the ways in which this information can be recorded using a variety of media. And it talks about some traditional methods of recording media like tapes, optical discs, and hard drives. And traditionally, these recordings are kept and I'm tripping over my words. They're kept and saved for a certain amount of time, which is called a retention period, before, in the book it says, before being reused or destroyed. So I hate to date myself, but I know when I started working for Hamilton Police, I was really young, like 12, and I worked at Switchboard. And I remember they had these big file cabinets at the back of the room with tape machines on them. And the supervisor would go to the back of the room periodically and remove these big reels of audio tapes from the back of the room. So it just goes to show how far agencies in Canada have gone in like 23 years or so, because we do not even have those anymore. I wouldn't know where they had put them after they got rid of them. So a lot of agencies nowadays might use a DEMS system or a digital evidence management system with their loggers. And they might actually take that audio and not put it on any of these things, but they might actually save it in a management system, which allows audio recordings to be securely stored locally and linked with other evidence relating to the call. So the call taker has taken the call, they've gotten the audio information from the call, it's gone through the logger, and it's being stored along with maybe evidence that a citizen has sent in, or recordings or officers' reports, in a one-stop shop. So public safety answer points have to follow, we said, their own internal retention policies and procedures for managing recorded data, because in Ontario, that's how it works. These timelines can vary depending on the type of the call. For example, with us, for an audio call that is connected to a major police incident, it's typically kept a lot longer than a routine 911 call, which we retain for 3 years per our retention policy. PSAPs also have to comply with FOI regulations, or Freedom of Information regulations, when they're disclosing that audio. So citizens might apply for information about their incident. They need to actually go through a Freedom of Information process. And a lot of centers might have a dedicated office that would deal with those, or established processes to ensure that the audio from the logging equipment is released appropriately. There is a lot of responsibility that goes along with recording of these nature. And it's important to remember that 911 audio is actually considered evidence at the end of the day. And PSAPs are responsible for preserving that evidence and maintaining accurate records and protecting the chain of evidence, especially if it's being released to the Crown. So that's the portion of the 911 call being recorded, or the administrative call, or even calling for a tow truck or an ambulance, or giving an update to paramedics. But telecommunicators also have other tools that go along with these equipment options that include helping to support their work while they're sitting at their desk. So most agencies will be familiar with instant recall recorders, or IRRs. If you have a Motorola radio system, you probably are familiar with it. And that allows short-term playback of recent calls, which will let a telecommunicator confirm details or clarify information. Maybe first responders have attended the scene and they don't have the correct address. It'll allow the supervisor or anyone to just really quickly listen to that call at the workstation through the instant recall. They can slow it down, they can speed it up. Lots of different things you can do just to clarify what someone has said. And then in addition, this section also mentions screen capture recorders, which will show exactly what's going on on the telecommunicator screen during the call or during a dispatch event. And those types of recordings would be extremely valuable because they'll provide a complete picture of what was going on at the time of the incident. They'd be great for quality assurance or for responding to inquiries or any kinds of complaints. And then on this page, Melissa has done a beautiful diagram, which basically sums up everything we discussed in these bullet points in a one-stop shop for you guys. It's outlined everything that is in the book and then just bullet pointed them just as a nice refresher.
We can make this available afterwards as well for the folder with the study questions later too, if that helps. Okay. All right. Next up is the PSAP equipment section, CAD, RMS, and mobile data content. So PSAPs will use computer-aided dispatch, or a CAD, to automate both the call taking and the dispatch processes. There are many different CAD vendors, but all the systems share the same goal, which is reducing the amount of time it takes to dispatch a call once it's received. While some PSAPs have moved to cloud-based environments, CAD systems are typically still configured using client-server models. So in this setup, the CAD server is a powerful computer that runs the core CAD application, while the client is the workstation used by the telecommunicator. The CAD systems are also valuable because of their interface capabilities. They can connect to external databases, such as for us in Ontario, we have the MTO, CPIC, which is run by the RCMP throughout Canada. And they can also go to internal systems, record management systems, or RMS, which is the acronym for them. These integrations improve efficiency, they reduce duplicate data entry, and support better situational awareness for both the call takers and the dispatchers. So this figure is from the textbook as well. It illustrates a typical CAD configuration showing how the CAD server, the telecommunicator, the workstations, external interfaces all work together within a PSAP environment. A typical CAD system includes both a primary processor or server and a secondary or backup server. This configuration provides redundancy at the PSAP and helps to ensure that the CAD system operates virtually 100% of the time, which is the goal. And under normal conditions, the primary server will handle the CAD workload, while the secondary server continuously monitors the health and performance of the primary. If the primary server fails or stops functioning, the secondary server automatically takes over, processing the CAD application, and in most configurations, the system also generates a notification to the system administrator or PSAP supervisor to alert them to the failure. And from an operational perspective, telecommunicators are typically not impacted by this type of failover. CAD continues to function and allowing the call taking and dispatch operations to proceed without interruption. So interoperability is a critical, I'm going to trip over my words now, Lisa, it's my turn. It's the mission critical part of public safety systems, and it's a key factor for many PSAPs to consider when selecting their CAD vendors. Systems such as RMS, GIS, and external databases integrate with CAD to provide essential information quickly and seamlessly. This automation will improve efficiency and enhance officer safety, particularly during roadside encounters where rapid information return is critical. Mobile data terminals, or MDTs, are used by the field units and have evolved significantly over time. Today's MDTs are portable and rugged and may use desktop or mobile platforms, Internet of Things technologies, and commercial cellular networks. Field units use their MDTs to access information from databases connected to CAD and RMS, including Ministry Vehicle Systems, which is the MTO in Ontario here, CPIC, and in the States they have NCIC. And that helps them to complete reports electronically and get the information they need to be while they're on scene. The land mobile radio was traditionally used for mobile communications, but many PSAPs now supplement it with cellular-based data delivery. And GIS has become essential due to the volume of wireless 911 calls now. CAD displays often include a map view showing the alley, the latitude or longitude, and the cell tower location, which is especially useful when callers are not at an addressable location. And finally, the automatic vehicle location or AVL feature that uses GPS and mapping together to track units in real time. And when integrated with CAD, AVL will provide a real-time situational awareness and supports the closest unit and routing recommendations. I know some PSAPs do use that. We kind of, I'd say we're a manual dispatch in Hamilton. We don't have the CAD tell us which units, but I know there are definitely some PSAPs that do use that feature. All right, and this diagram here is just kind of a simplistic overview of the end-to-end process, demonstrating how the data moves through the systems from the call creation with the telecommunicator all the way through to the responder deployment and all the different systems that will integrate along the way. All right, over to you, Lisa.
Thanks. So you've got all this lovely equipment in your agency that you use every day for all of these beautiful things to help first responders and to get real-time situational awareness. But what good is it if you don't have power? And what good is it if you're sitting in a facility that doesn't really support communicators taking those calls, in that maybe it's too hot, or maybe it's too cold, or maybe the lighting is insufficient? There are probably commonalities that we all have at some point, and pain points of sitting in a PSAP 24/7, 365 days a year through any type of weather or any type of situation. You just sit there and move on, and the world continues on around you as you're kind of tied to the environment that you're in. So section 2.7.5 discusses UPSs, and UPSs are uninterruptible power supplies, which I didn't realize I would ever care about until I became an acting supervisor in Hamilton in an old building. And I now know more than I should about UPS systems, but they are essential for a PSAP to ensure it continues to run in the face of any types of complications that can happen. And I don't know about anybody else, but we have gone through power outages in Hamilton. We have had our PSAP run off of generator for a significant amount of time. We have had one scary moment where our power did go out and our generator did not turn on. It was a moment, but it was a scary moment nonetheless. So that is something that is huge for PSAPs to ensure that they've got plans for. PSAPs of today have to make sure that in the face of a disaster, they're going to keep running. And that disaster could be anything. It could be environmental, it could be technical, or it could be as a result of human interference, unfortunately, in today's society. The environment at the PSAP has to be designed to support what is called the continuity of operations. And I know there is a different chapter of the study guide that will discuss this. So this will loop in at that point for everybody. And I don't remember which section this is in, unfortunately. But PSAPs of today, usually you'll find they have an evacuation plan or a continuity of operations plan. And that plan will outline all of the safety measures in place and what to do in the event of any type of disruption of service. So again, very important. This is all mission critical systems, as Melissa said. So they rely upon resiliency and redundancy. on a daily basis. So the UPS is basically a battery powered source, and it protects the PSAP against power spikes, brownouts, power outages, weather related disruptions, and many more things. Commercial power is routed through the UPS, and all of the mission critical communications center equipment is connected to that UPS. If the commercial power goes out, so the power's gone out, the UPS picks up the power load for a period of time. So the objective is that that UPS will maintain the PSAP until such time as normal operations are restored. So normal power or commercial power is restored, and you can just switch back over. UPS generators, since they're not, hopefully not, routinely used, require regular testing. So I don't know how many agencies here do regular testing, but in Hamilton, we do it. And typically the facilities department will work with the PSAP center staff to ensure regular testing, and it should be covered in that evacuation book that I talked about. So coordination is required, and it's recommended that it's done on a regular basis. So ours is done on a certain day every month, and there is an audible alarm in the room, but we know ahead of time that it's being tested. UPS alarms at the PSAP site are ideal because if you're sitting in the comm center and you're really busy, you might not notice a little light, but you might hear an alarm. You might not, depending on how loud it is, but there should be some sort of notification system that UPS has an alarm that notifies key people. So maybe an email goes to IT or a page out goes out there, but there should be something as well in the PSAP so that someone is in charge of an immediate resolution. And that ties in with disaster recovery, which is an important part of PSAP operations. PSAPs, like I said, they should have an overarching plan that will deal with those interruptions in power. And any equipment that relates to the running of the 911 center should be included in the planning. So you're thinking about all of the equipment, but also fuel plans. So if you've got a generator that runs on fuel, how are you getting a fuel supply if it's over an extended period of time? Are your field units, how are they fueling up their vehicles? So are fuel cards being handed out? These are all the types of things that go into this section when it talks about power and facility resilience. It isn't just that UPS battery, it's what you're going to do to sustain yourselves over a duration of time, which hopefully the agency would talk about what is an acceptable time period. And one of the most important things in all of this is the telecommunicator well-being, which is the last point. It shouldn't be the last point, but it was in the study guide because they're the ones that are sitting in this environment. And what is the generator that's got the mission critical systems running on it temporarily? What is it supporting? What kind of environmental controls are in the agency? Is there adequate lighting? If you've got powered desks for sit-stand for ergonomic reasons, are those hooked up to that? So those are the kinds of things that this section discusses. There's a lot of facilities-related verbiage, but it really is the discussion of what the PSAP is doing to maintain itself.
Okay, good job. Okay, our next section here is for TTY and TDD and texting to 911. So TTY and TDD are the legacy methods of communicating with 911 in society. That's for the deaf and hard of hearing community. And our society is now moving away from them. In Canada, this technology is being sunsetted, although some PSAPs have either integrated TTY into their call handling systems or still maintain the standalone TTY machines. I know we only just unplugged ours after we went over to our NG system. So next up, coming in the future, will be text to 911, or also called T911 in the study guide. It is available in Canada, but on a subscription-based system only. So users must register their phone with their wireless service providers, and the calls are always initiated by voice first. The telecommunicator can hear the audio and background noise through the call. The system then alerts the telecommunicator that the caller is using text to 911, and they initiate a session via an application, a separate application on the side. In Ontario, we have Bell, and they use a Text Blue system. And that's where we exchange messages through SMS with the caller. In the US, they have an interim SMS to 911 solution that allows any subscriber to text a participating PSAP. These rely on a text control center, or TCC, which queries the originating network for the caller's location and routes the text to the appropriate PSAP. Limitations for this system include there are no roaming support and the need for the PSAP to opt in to the system and record the record retention planning. So they have to take that all into account when they opt into the system. In Canada, the next step for us is going to be the real-time text, or RTT, and it's being rolled out nationally soon. Let's call it soon. It's going to be in a few years, and I know that date keeps getting moved. So in the US, the RTT implementation varies by agency, and FCC had a ruling in 2016, and they set a schedule for wireless carriers to transition from TTY to RTT to modernize the emergency text communication. And we just have a little chart here to compare the differences in the 911 text services between Canada and the United States, because they are quite different at this time. We can make this chart available as well with the study materials. Okay, next up is the type of PSAPs.
Right, and we won't spend much time on this, but I will say it is important to know all of the different types of PSAPs. Oh wait, Tracy, do you have a question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My question is just this. So because the study guide is US based, these discussions are Canada. So are we expected to know US and Canadian stuff? Like, what is expected for the exam?
I don't know if Kate is still on the call here. I know we had, when I wrote my exam only 2 years ago, we had both Canadian and American content. But I've heard that the Canadian exam, and when you register, you do register to take the Canadian exam. But I have heard that it is moving towards a more Canadian only content for the Canadian exam. I'm sure Kate can verify that.
Yeah, Tracy, there is a Canadian exam, and it does really have only Canadian content. It's good to understand a little bit about how the US does things and how we do things differently, just in general, period. And then also just because some like legislation and things in the US, Canada they may have legislation for something, or there's a reason for something. And in Canada, we may do things, we may have best practices or do things slightly different. So I participated years ago in a US study group. And although I was studying the Canadian stuff, I found just touching on some of I wouldn't study it, but just understanding the differences and understanding that I think is important just in general, period. Does that make sense?
Totally. I'm just trying to figure out where I should focus my studies. Like, I'm thinking I should just focus on reviewing all the presentations, and that's going to be my best bet. And then also like reading the study guide, but really study the presentations.
Yeah, for me, I did a combination. I worked off the body of knowledge. So I made sure that everything on the body of knowledge I really understood. And then the study guide sessions helped me kind of put all those pieces together, explain it in common terms, things that I could relate to my experience. And then the study guide really goes very, very, very in depth. So when you're going through the body of knowledge, I would kind of pull from all of that. It's not all encompassing, but it certainly helps if you focus on the study guide and use the study group to understand the concepts.
Thank you.
I agree. Tracy, each exam is slightly like Kate and I wrote our exam at the same time, and I found my exam was very definitions focused, and I heard from someone else they had a different type of exam, but Mine was, even though it was 5 years ago, Canadian mostly. It just had a little bit of American to touch on. So it was just important to know. I would know the differences slightly, but I wouldn't get caught up in the weeds of them, if that helps. I also did a little glossary of all of the acronyms, and I made sure I knew this one slide because I remember having several questions on different types of PSAPs. So I won't go too far into these. They're not difficult to understand. I just put all the different types that we read in the book, and they give a short explanation of what each one is and how it works. Virtual, I do not know of any virtual PSAPs in Canada, but maybe somebody else does. But that literally is, I know during COVID in the States, it was sampled where the PSAP was virtual and all of the call takers were at different locations. So I did add that one in here. And in our notes, we'll give the definitions of these that we got from the book as well in our language.
Okay. This is my favorite part of the entire presentation. This beautiful diagram is in the study notes. Can you see my mouse when I'm moving? Oh, yes,
Yes.
Lisa's nodding. Okay. So I just remember being very intimidated by this type of graphic when I started studying. And then one point I realized I work in a PSAP. I get this. We can all understand this. There are two different paths being shown at the same time here. On the left, it starts with the landline or a VoIP 911 caller. And it has the call is routed, goes through the local end office and then into the tandem office, which is where the selective router is. And then it comes down the 911 trunking system. So the selective router database here, I'm pointing with my hand, it's not helpful, is it? Using my mouse. The selective router database at the selective router decides which PSAP is going to get this call. And it goes through the 911 trunks, picks up the ANI controller, goes over to the PBX and into the telecommunicator's phone. So it's a call taker, if anyone's ever call taked in here, that's how the call gets to you. That's how the landline calls come. The wireless callers, which are now probably pushing 90% of the calls in Canada, they first have to go through the mobile switch center, then they hit the selective router. So all the calls at the end of the day are going to go through the selective router, which still come back over to the telecommunicator. Except the ALI controller at the same time we were talking earlier will in the background go and pick up the location information to add to the call, and it puts it back over to the call taker here. So that when it is a mobile call, there's this extra data path here, which is going to get the Latin long for us. So that's going to be the phase 2 data that comes afterwards with the cell phones, which I know is in another part of the your study notes. But this is kind of the big picture where everything gets put together. And this kind of picture kind of for me just throws everything coming together to understand how all the different pieces come together. So we have our telecommunicator phone over here, which is not showing, but also the CAD system we talked about today and all the other systems. They're all over here and everything all comes together all in one picture. This is kind of a dated picture. This is from the study guide, but we did find a more kind of streamlined, up-to-date picture. We were poking around the internet and found this, and I just thought it's the same process, but it just shows it kind of more streamlined. But you have wireline calls and wireless calls, and they all go through the selective router. And the selective router gets changed. This is very E911 based, calling it a selective router, but there's still a selective router when it comes down to when you get into the NG stuff in the other presentations, that'll just be IP based instead of a selective router being programmed. But this just all is kind of the big picture of how the calls get to the PSAPs and how the PSAPs put all their processes together. So this one shows that their CAD system here and the information for the location comes in together. And the goal at the end of the day is to send the emergency services out once the calls come to the PSAP. And the last picture, this one is just a little bit of an updated graphic from the book. Sorry, actually, Lisa, I think you might have a blurb to say about this one.
We thought about this one.
We sure did.
I find this one intimidating, even though there's only 4 graphics on it. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about reliability and redundancy and survivability, it all means making sure our agencies don't go down. And what do you do in order to do that? You have a primary and a secondary, meaning you always have more than one way to fail. You can have multiple ways that a 911 call can fail. So what are you going to do in order to mitigate that risk? And that's what this diagram basically sums up. At the PSAP level, like PSAPs have to make sure, and they do, that they've included multiple paths for the calls and diverse links. And I know that that is enforced by whoever is your 911. What is the word I want to say? Your 911, whether it's Bell, TELUS, or SaskTel provider. Oh my goodness.
Provider.
So they won't let you survive if you don't have more than one way in. Usually a PSAP may not know, but they will have these multiple paths and diverse links for the caller. If they can't reach 911 through the primary tandem, which is what's shown here, it can be rerouted to the secondary or another trunk group, such as your 10-digit emergency number if you're on E911. Most PSAPs will have one of those, and most PSAPs will maintain redundant trunks to ensure their calls are received in E911. In Hamilton, we had something like 19, and then we had a separate redundant trunks of 19 more. And that is what this picture is saying. It's just supporting dual or mated E911 tandems, meaning primary and secondary, having a backup.
I think that's it. We did it.
We thank you all for your patience. We're really nervous about doing this.
Thank you for the hand clapping emoji. I just saw that come up. Are there any questions from anybody?
And I'm sorry, Tracy, I did get your question from Kate. We did kind of hearken it back to Hamilton using examples, and it wasn't necessarily needed. We just used it in case somebody had a hard time understanding the concepts like I did.
No, that's great. And also you guys kind of followed it up. I understand more now. I was just getting a little like freaked out about what I should focus on. And
That'll happen in waves, I think.
I feel better, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And I think like this section in particular, if you've worked in a PSAP, this was my favorite section when I was studying, because I was like, oh, I finally know what's happening. Like, this is something I can relate to in my day-to-day work, where some of the other sections are a little more abstract at first.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm struggling with the most is like, I understand the systems. Like, I ran a center. It's the verbiage that they're using. It's like, and the graphs, I'm like, I don't even know where I'm supposed to start on this graph. Oh, I'm starting at the outside and working in. Like,
right.
I get it. It's just different verbs, different words, different grammar, different acronyms. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'll figure it out. But I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, for sure. The glossary and memorizing all of the terms and the acronyms, it's a big part of it for me. And I found like an online quiz tool to put the glossary in to quiz myself, and I would quiz myself every day, the 30 days leading up. As soon as I booked the exam, there was like a 30-day countdown for myself, and every day I was going through my glossary and quizzing myself. And Kate will have to remind me what a pass is. Maybe I'm going to say 70% is a pass. Kate?
It's not a hard number. It's different questions are weighted differently. So it's not a pass fail. I mean, when Lisa and I wrote it, we didn't have AI tools, the fancy AI tools that we have now, but we used an app called Quizlet, and I found that very helpful. Yes. So if you download the app, It's called Quizlet, and then you could look for ENP study guide questions, and people have loaded all kinds of questions in there, and that might be helpful too. But it is an intimidating process, especially when you've done the job for so long and you're like, I know how this works, but to get really deep in the weeds it's a lot and it's intimidating, Tracy, so you're not alone. Thank you so much, Melissa and Lisa, for presenting. Very much appreciate everything. I will, as soon as I have the recording, I'm going to load it into our drop file for everybody to access. And I know you have some sample questions as well and material that we can add into there as well. So thank you for that additional material. And if anything comes up, feel free to email me and we can pass those questions along and make sure that we get your questions answered. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.